Okay, so I said at the beginning of the course that I don't like doing video blogs. I still don't, so I'm going to do another one as my final learning reflection to have a little bit more practice at it. And I've got a few little notes written on a piece of paper to help me remember what I want to say. So to begin with, this course was not at all what I was really expecting when I signed up for EDIM 630. To be fair, I don't actually know what it was that I was then expecting, because reflecting back on it, the fact that change has been such an integral part of the course is exactly what the course said that it would do. So I think I was probably a little bit naive with my expectations coming in. I had no idea that change literature was quite so extensive, that there were so many models of change management, that there were so many different ways to do it. And so I think that's probably where the naivety came from, but it makes complete sense that it is such an extensive area. I really appreciate the depth that I've had added to my understanding of how to integrate ICT into education as a result of really exploring these different ideas of change. I think that probably until now I'd taken the change process maybe for granted, and just thought that it was something that people went through, and it just flowed along, and you took an idea and you went with it, and it happened, and not really pulled apart how it happens and why it happens, and the external influences, and what happens internally to people, and how change can be different for this group and individuals, and all these different components, and not something that I'd actually stopped to think about. So it's really given me some clear next steps for how I see my learning progressing, but also how in terms of what I want to do with being able to guide teachers through change and mentor teachers through into bringing ICT into their teaching. It's given me much more of an awareness of how to do that, and of things which are critical to bring into mind. I think before now I'd been thinking about the pedagogy and the learner's needs, and how we need to address that, and how the tool has to fit the specific need that's identified. But I'd not actually thought about it from the teaching, the change perspective that the teacher would have to go through in order to use that. I guess last year with 628 I'd done a little bit of that when I mentored a teacher from New Zealand while I was in the Middle East, and mentored her through a process. And it was quite interesting for me to see, and I mentioned this in my written reflection, it was quite interesting for me to see the process she went through, and be able to match that with some of the change models as we went through the course this year, because it's always nice to look at it from a perspective of someone else through their eyes, as well as through your own process that you're going through. I waffle quite a lot. I found this to be one of the most challenging papers in my Masters so far, and I'm over halfway through, and I'm glad that I didn't do it at the beginning, but I'm equally glad that I have been stretched like this, and I've been forced to think outside of my own kind of boundaries and my own comfort zone, because I think that's a very important part of personal growth and development, is stretching ourselves. So I'm grateful that the course has done that. One of the things that really helped at the beginning, and people have mentioned this time and time again, was the facilitation, and it really modelled for us what effective facilitation can do. But it was also really useful in having that quick feedback, and that really supportive nature being built up from Wayne and Nikki, you two, but also from the rest of our colleagues. And I'd been unsure at the beginning what I thought about the blogs, having a blog as well as having the online forum discussions. I wasn't quite sure how the two were going to work together, whether one would become redundant, or what would happen there. And it's my first blog that I've seen through for a decent amount of time, so I'm really happy with that. And I found it a very useful place, not only for interacting with my peers, but also just for interacting with my own mind, really, and having that ability to brainstorm essentially, and just blah everything out, and work through things that way. So it was a really valuable process, and I did really enjoy having that blog. And I think the online forums also were very useful, because that still seemed to be the place where everyone went to discuss together. And it's much easier to have a discussion which everyone can contribute to in that sort of setting than necessarily on blogs, where it was kind of more you read and you have interest and you comment on people here and there, but it wasn't as much backwards and forwards discussion. I thought I might try and think a little bit about the MOOC, given that it's the first MOOC I've completed, the second one I've signed up for. The first one I signed up for, everything just got in the way, and I didn't do any of it really, other than a few readings. So it was nice to get through one, even though it was part of our Canterbury course. What I liked about this MOOC, and I know some people made some comments that they found it too bitsy, but I quite liked the 3-day jump, 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 and that worked well for me because having the 2 activities in those 3 days gave me, well, various activities, but a couple of main ones, gave me something to focus on, and it broke it down. Okay, after learning my lesson and trying to record directly onto YouTube, maybe 4 or 5 times, and ending up with it keeping on cutting out, I'm now trying to use iMovie, no, QuickTime, and we'll see instead. But I'm not going to do the whole first 6 minutes again. I'm going to try and cut the two together with not too much of a jumpy cut, and hopefully you'll get that one, then this one, with a slightly different video screen. Apologies. So I was up to talking about scenario planning, and I did record the whole rest of it, but I can't remember what I said. I was just not talking to a recording screen. Never mind. So I think I was talking about how having the three days worth of stuff was really useful for me, because it meant that for me it meant that my time planning worked a lot more easily. Apologies if I repeat myself from what I've just said already. I understand how some people found it difficult because if you had to duck out for a certain amount of time, then say for a day or two because of whatever commitments you had, it would be difficult to come back in and follow what had been going on in the conversation, and also you would have possibly missed a whole mini section. So having some kind of roundup or summary which people could go back to of each section, I think would be really worthwhile. I loved the interactions with my colleagues and the participants from Canterbury and worldwide in that course, especially the little 140 characters with Twitter. It was really fun to just be able to blur out little random things and quite jokey because everything was more fast moving. It was almost like text message conversation. So you could be a lot more casual and make comments that didn't require quite so much explanation but got your point across, and that was I really quite enjoyed that. I think that built some nice atmosphere in the course. But that being said, I did feel like I had to be online quite often, and I think that's my own fear of missing out kind of idea. I don't think that's necessarily something that's particular to the course or to the style. I think that's more my own personal thing. The scenario planning that MOOC was part of started out for me very interesting but confusing. Then became very frustrating when I was trying to nut out my assignment because I knew what I had in my head but wasn't quite getting there. And then really rewarding and really very interesting by the end of it. I think I see huge value in that process. I like that we're not tied to one particular future, that it takes different scenarios into account and kind of as a way towards all. And I think that it's, being an English teacher, really I like the creativity and the intuition side of that as well. But I do think it requires a particular type of skills and thinking that are really beneficial and that perhaps aren't necessarily quite what's being taught in some of our classrooms today. Just as a little aside there. I liked the South African example that they did in the community. I see real value in that as well. So I definitely see that the scenario planning is applicable across a many range of areas. I'm living in Upper Hutt, a little suburb, small town near Wellington, and I've been back for 3 months. And it's interesting, after having travelled for 4 years, to come back to Upper Hutt and see just how things haven't changed at all, or if anything they seem to have perhaps gone backwards. Shops are closing, there's not much going on, there's not a lot of things for kids to do, for teenagers to do, I think that having a really strong visionary team who got together and took something like scenario plan initiative as a way forward could really have a positive impact on getting an area like this up and running again. So yeah, I like scenario planning. I'm well sold. And the ELPF work I found really interesting. I met Karen Malush the other day for a coffee, and I was explaining to her that we'd been looking at it as part of the course. She said, "Oh, that's the course you're doing, right." And we had a bit of a chat about how I had evaluated the two schools, Abu Dhabi and a school here in Wellington, and just a comparison of where each was at. And what really struck me when I was telling her is how within a school you're across the board so much. Some might be up here, some are down here, and even within a single category, the bullet points are miles away from each other. And that obviously raises some difficulties for schools and how they're going to deal with that, but is a really valuable process. And she was making the comment that just enabling schools to see that and then to have those discussions is really powerful. So I think that ELPF is a good document. There's so much good stuff being done here in New Zealand. So I think in the interest of saving people's time and not blabbing on forever, and knowing that I'm going to now go and try and put these two videos together, at the end of this course I feel a real sense of achievement. I felt at the beginning pulled in very many different directions, and like my thinking was quite scattered, and I feel now like I've really learnt a lot in my interest in particular areas that I didn't necessarily have an interest in before has been solidified, and I'm really clear on what it is that I want to keep looking at in the future. And I knew that, yes, is exactly what you guys would say, that it was really full on at the beginning, and by the end we'd had a chance to reflect and to go deeper into things and follow our own interests, and assessments become quite a passion of mine, as is doing change properly and effectively. So I'm really grateful for everything that's come out of this course, and thank you both, Wayne and Nikki, for facilitating. It's been a really, really good, positive 2013.